Typically, when you go RVing, you're venturing out by yourself, with your partner, or even with your family. Yet there's another way that many people enhance their RVing experience, and that is to hit the road with friends. Unlike getting together for an afternoon, going to a park, or taking a hike, RVing with your friends can be quite different, primarily because you'll be spending a lot of time with these people. There are several things to consider before hitting the road with friends, which is why we're joining the Mortons and the RV Geeks in the midst of their very own RVing co-adventure for some tips on how to ensure that your time RVing with friends is a positive experience.
This is a great example of people who are very compatible because we socialize really well together and obviously like to laugh together.
We've been together now for coming up on a month, and we're still having fun. So that says a lot about our compatibility. At least our compatibility with you.
We're having fun as well, but you definitely don't have that with everybody that you go camping with. I mean, a lot of people want to have meals together, every single meal, breakfast together, coffee together, then lunch, then okay, what are we going to do for dinner?
Every night.
Campfire, drinks, cocktails, woo, what are we doing next? And that can be exhausting if you're not also at that speed. So finding people and talking to people about your level and finding a matching one is really important, I think.
We've traveled with friends all over the country. We've traveled with friends in Alaska, on the East, West Coast, but a lot of what we like to do is visit remote spots, go off-grid and boondock, but that might not always be what everyone wants to do when traveling with friends either.
Yeah, it's true.
Sometimes people may want to hook up at an RV park and have the amenities and be able to share those experiences, but like where we are now in the desert, we love being out and remote and getting to share that nature experience sometimes.
But some people, right, and we probably know a couple of people who might be really bored out here and not find enough things to do, which, you know, is just all in your interests and your preferences.
So talking about the location you're going to, whether you're going to an RV park or going boondocking, also brings up the topic of rig size or rig type. So, you know, we're both in large RVs. We've got large tank capacities, large battery banks. It means we can go out into more remote places for longer periods, but it also limits some of the places that we can go. We can't get into some of the tighter spots that might be some of the most beautiful or the most remote to be able to just go have fun with friends in. We can't actually make it there. So if you're talking about having a group of people with different size RVs, different capacities for how long they can be out, that then becomes a factor of making sure that everybody's comfortable with how long they can stay in one spot and whether they can get to the spot.
One thing that's very helpful for us is that we have a 150-gallon fuel tank and virtually unlimited range. We couldn't empty our fuel tank in one day of driving because we have nearly 1,000-mile capacity on our tank, and we would certainly never drive that far in one day. But more realistically, people have limits on what they want to do that isn't just based on their fuel capacity. It might have to do with other tank capacity, like their bladders. Maybe they don't want to drive for 500 or 600 or 700 miles in a day. Another thing that might determine how well you can travel is how flexible you are. So even though we normally would travel 400 or 500 miles in a long day of driving, we don't have to. And we don't have to follow nose to tail all the time, but can instead split apart, see different things, come back together, and have our trip basically caravan together in a hopscotch fashion, which we like a lot.
And so to just understand that everyone has different interests, everyone has different travel styles, everybody has different comfort levels. That's very important in having a good experience with them and being flexible and letting people do what they want to do while not like limiting them or forcing them to do something that they're uncomfortable with.
Well, even though we've talked about a lot of the challenges with traveling with friends, there are so many benefits that I think we all get from it. And for me, a lot of it is just having that shared experience. Even going to a new place, experiencing something new, something you may not have done before, you get to share that experience with someone. And you can also, whether you're a full-timer or not, it may be fun to think of having your friends as neighbors for a while. And we are truly just living life, whether we're having an awesome time or working, we're living life in our RVs for a short period of time or an extended period of time, and getting to have your friends as neighbors and share in everything life, whether challenges in the RV or awesome times out in the ATVs in the desert. It's just a whole different way to experience it.
When you truly click with someone, prepare yourself for a remarkable experience. You'll have a terrific support network right there on the road with you. You'll have an added feeling of security, especially if you're venturing out into unfamiliar terrain. Whether it's sharing adventures, having potlucks and sitting around the campfire, or being pushed out of your comfort zone, when you go RVing with friends, you're bound to create amazing new memories together that will last a lifetime.
Here's to spending time together with friends.
Over the years, one of the topics about RVing that we get the most number of questions about is the RV electrical system. And it's not really a surprise because they are a little bit complicated, because they combine aspects of both a car's 12-volt system and a house's AC system. So we have set out here in front of us two systems. One side's DC, one side's AC, to represent what you would typically find in most RVs.
So the DC side is a lot like your automobile. RVs always have a battery, which is the heart of the DC system. Just like your car, when the engine's off, your lights still continue to function. And the DC power, direct current provided from the battery, allows you to keep your RV lights on and operate things like the water pump, vent fan, slides, jacks, and many other DC systems in the RV that function all the time. So while the battery is the source of power, it is only a storage medium, meaning that it doesn't actually produce energy, so it needs to be recharged. Typically, it's recharged from actually driving, similar to driving your car, while your alternator from the engine powers the battery, or solar power, which can charge the battery directly. There is a third means to charge the battery, however, which is through the converter, or on the table here represented by a battery charger that we can plug in to the AC system. So what kind of higher powered appliances do we have in the RV on the AC side?
Well, certainly the most familiar might be the ones that are built into the RV. So you have your air conditioning units and maybe a microwave oven. Those are definitely high power draw appliances that really need to run off of AC power. But in addition to that, we also have outlets throughout the RV, the same kind that we're used to in our regular sticks and bricks homes. So anything you can plug into one of those outlets, a food processor or a hair dryer or an Instant Pot, any of those items could be powered from AC. Another item that's commonly included in an RV that is powered from the AC side would be the battery charger that Tom mentioned earlier. So in order to recharge your 12-volt power system, you may want to be able to plug into shore power or plug into a portable generator or use your built-in generator to actually convert that 120-volt or 240-volt AC power into DC to now resupply your batteries so you can go back out off the grid.
So while RVs do have converters to provide AC power to charge the DC system and keep your lights on, where does that power come from?
So all RVs get plugged into shore power at some point in time. And that's going to be through a power cord. Now, in this case, this is a 50 amp cord. It's the highest power draw you can have. Your RV, depending on its size, may have either a 50, a smaller one at 30, or possibly even just a 20 amp plug, which would be much more like your typical household plug that you plug any of your regular appliances in. The amount of power you're able to draw is determined by this cord. So bigger RVs, they're more power hungry, they need a bigger cord. But you can always adapt the larger cord down to smaller using something like this, which will actually let you take the 50 amp cord and plug it into a 30 amp pedestal. Once you have the RV plugged in, whether it's shore or generator power, that's what's going to provide the AC current to the charger
to then recharge your DC system.
So the DC system and AC system are truly separate systems with two separate wire systems, the black and red of the DC and typically a white and black of the AC side. And we can only convert power between the two systems. So we convert it from AC to DC with a converter or a battery charger, but we can also convert power from the DC side back to the AC side with a neat device called an inverter. Here on the table, we have a small portable unit that we have hooked up to the battery here, and it takes the DC power on this side and has typical AC power ports on the other side that we can plug any of these devices into. Now, this unit is pretty small. It's only gonna power some smaller devices, but in an RV, you can actually install much larger units that can be 3, even 5,000 watts that can take the DC power and convert it into things that we can use, larger appliances, even air conditioners sometimes. There are a handful of appliances that can sit on the line between the two systems as well. In an RV, typically a refrigerator, which can operate on DC power or AC power, and also a lot of times a water heater. All of these appliances, however, still require the DC system to be in operation because it's typically what keeps everything alive, if you will, inside the RV.
That's a really great point. Most of the appliances and other devices on board your RV rely on that 12-volt power to run the circuitry that actually makes them function. So even if you had an RV refrigerator plugged into 110-volt AC power, it needs the DC in order to run the circuitry to actually know what to do.
Because it's always on, just like your car battery. So while RVs do have two independent systems that may seem a little complicated, they really do provide the best of both worlds, being able to have the AC side, just like in a house, and the flexibility and portability of the DC side that's gonna keep you powered even when you're rolling down the road.
Cash. And, you know, it comes with its challenges. And when we got to our first campsite, we turned on the kitchen tap and there was no water. So we had to do a little bit of work to get all the filters cleared out and get all the lines cleared out. But one of the first things we did was we painted everything. We painted all the walls, we painted all the cabinets. The upper cabinets are all white and the lower kitchen cabinets are gray. We painted the countertop. We replaced the flooring so it didn't look like vinyl from 1992. And we redid all the fabrics. We recovered them all. There were 4 bunks. We only have 3 boys, so we took out one of the bunks at the bottom so they had a play area. And then we actually put in a rock climbing wall between the bunks because usually use the bottom bunks to step up onto the top bunks. But with one of the bottom bunks missing, it was gonna be really hard to get up onto the top bunk. There wasn't space for a ladder. So we put in some rock climbing steps and they get to climb up to their bed every night. And it kind of felt like our space. You know, even though we weren't buying it new, it felt fresh for us.
In a relatively short time, the McLaughlins have sure come a long way being a family with virtually no experience RVing. Not only have they become a family who RVs, here at the RVers, they have become the RVers family, a title which will see them interacting with this show's viewers and fans online, as well as sharing tips and tricks they've learned firsthand as a family on the road. And although they set out with the intention of trying RVing out for a year's time, they seem to have been bitten by the RVing bug, having blown through that milestone with no intention of calling it quits anytime soon.
A lot of people ask us, so how long are you going to be traveling and where do you plan to settle down after? And at this point, because of our joy in traveling, we really haven't decided what the future looks like that. We just want to keep on traveling and adding to our list every day the places we want to go.
I mean, it's incredible how much we've seen, and it's also incredible how much we haven't seen. There's just so much more to explore.
One of the biggest questions we're asked about RVing is, what if we want to bring a car along with our RV? How do we tow it? Well, we've come to Vancouver, Washington to talk with one of the most knowledgeable people about towing that we've ever met. David Robinson from Roadmaster, who is the answer man and has taught us a lot of what we know about how to tow, the pros and cons of the different types of systems you can use, and he's going to fill us in today on more detail than we're qualified to even talk about. David, it is great to have you here with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. It's great to be here.
So what are the most common ways that people tow cars behind motorhomes? How do they do it?
Sure, yeah, there's typically 3 different ways, actually. Probably the most common for full-timers is using a tow bar. That's what we call 4-down flat towing. And, you know, with that kind of a mechanism, you're literally hitching up the car to the back of your RV and towing it around the country. The second way is with a tow dolly. And with that kind of a mechanism, you're literally going to drive the front wheels of your tow car up onto this dolly, and then with a trailer hitch and ball, you're going to tow that around the country. The third way is with a trailer. Some people might use a flatbed, but more commonly in the RV industry would be an enclosed trailer.
Now, we don't see a lot of those. Is it fair to say that trailers are the least common way?
That is fair to say, yeah. Trailers are expensive. It's an extra set of, typically a pair of axles, so you got more brakes and more tires, more maintenance. But I think a lot of people find that there's not space at the campground for them. They're a little bit harder to load and offload.
So then the choices for most people are between flat towing, 4 wheels on the ground, or using a tow dolly. So what advantages might there be to one versus the other?
Well, you know, there's pros and cons to both methods. With a tow dolly, they're really ideal for somebody that has a car that's not towable, because not every car can be flat towed without damaging the transmission. Also with a tow dolly, they're great if you have multiple cars that you want to tow. But for most people, if they're going to keep a car for more than 2 or 3 years, flat towing is usually easier for them. Flat towing is a little bit more expensive. If you look at the price of a tow dolly versus a tow bar and a base plate and the wiring and everything that goes with the installation. But I can tell you from experience that a good share of the people that buy a tow dolly originally, a year or 2 later, they end up getting a tow bar system. You know, the other thing to think about is that when you load a car onto a dolly, it's going to take you 2 to 3 times as long to hook up and disconnect as it would with a tow bar. So that's one of the primary reasons people go with a tow bar as opposed to a tow dolly.
One of the things you mentioned was about how some cars can't be towed with 4 wheels down. What are the factors that affect that?
So it just depends upon the transmission itself. Some of them lend themselves to self-lubricating and self-cooling. Some of them do not. But there's getting to be more and more cars that are not flat towable. And for that reason, a lot of people are leaning towards 4-wheel drives where they have a true neutral transfer case. And I encourage anybody who's thinking about buying a tow car to do their research. There are some cars where you have to stop every 2 hours. There are some cars where it's every 4 hours, some it's every 6. But more than that, there's cars now where you have to pull fuses. There's cars where you have to disconnect batteries. And although there's solutions for almost all of those things, it all has to be added on, and it kind of increases the overall package price.
Now, we know that some people who are planning to go out RVing already own a car that they'd like to take with them when they RV. And the fact that they already own a car and don't want to buy another one specifically to go RVing may dictate what they have to do. They may have no choice but to dolly tow, is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, just kind of a summary, what are the components that someone would need to buy for dolly towing versus flat towing?
Sure. Well, if you're going to use a tow dolly, you're going to need to have a receiver hitch on the motorhome, but you're also going to need that for a tow bar. But if you're going to use a tow dolly, you're going to need a ball mount, which you're going to want to have a drop or a riser so that the tow dolly sits level. And then you're going to need a trailer ball. Then you're going to need the tow dolly itself. Hopefully it has electric brakes or hydraulic brakes built in. And then, of course, your towed car. With the tow bar, we already talked about the fact that it's a bar, it's a base plate, it's a wiring kit. Many bars come with power cords that conduct the electricity between the car and the motorhome. Many bars come with safety cables, which are required by law. But many tow bars don't come with those accessories, so you'd have to buy those as well.
Since our Nighthawk was installed, we have never taken it off the RV. We don't have any reason to. And I want to mention one of the safety things about the Nighthawk, and one of the reasons that we chose it is because of the fact that we are in a big vehicle. If we pass a car on the highway, for example, that car might not expect there to be a car behind us being towed.
Right, yep.
And one of the things that the Nighthawk does, and what made us so interested in it, is the fact that it is lit. And I know this can be turned on here. I'm going to go ahead and just turn this on while we're talking about it, that the LED lights here light up that area between us.
Yeah, and that's very important because, as you say, it's a dead space. The way towed cars are wired, the lights on the back of the towed car, fully functional, fully illuminated. But if you're pacing alongside the RV, you can't see the lights on the back of your towed car 20, 30 feet back. And so there's a natural tendency to want to just dive in behind the motorhome. Oops, surprise. Well, that's why we put the lighting system on the Nighthawk tow bar. It is a safety thing, but it's more than that. When you get to where you're going, if you happen to be running late, or if you're an early riser and you get up before the sun comes up.
We don't know anything about that, but we do know about the late arrival part sometimes.
Yeah, and so it's really nice to have that whole area between the car and the motorhome illuminated so that you can disconnect, fold the tow bar up, disconnect your power and cables, etc.
Well, we appreciate it very much, and we can't thank you enough for having us here and spending the time to really fill people in on a lot of the basics of what they can expect in their decisions as they get started RVing, if they want to bring their car along, and what the pros and cons and most likely ways are to do that. So thanks so much, David.
It has truly been my pleasure. Thank you.